Please video like and subscribe this channel. The Hall of Accord had been carved from a single mountain of black crystal, older than most civilizations that still remembered their own beginnings. Its ceiling arched so high that clouds of glowing spores drifted like slow stars above the gathered nobles. Every sound carried every breath, every scrape of claw or talon, because the hall was designed for judgment. Nothing spoken here was ever meant to be forgotten. At the center stood the throne of convergence, a structure grown rather than built, its living surfaces pulsing faintly with bioluminescent veins. Upon it sat Queen Zyrith of the Valorian Dominion, ruler of 1,000 systems, her elongated crown of bone and gold framing eyes that had watched worlds rise and fall without remorse. Before her, alone on the obsidian floor, stood a human. Commander Elias Rowan wore no armor. His uniform had been taken when he was brought through the gates, leaving him in simple grey fabric marked only by a faded insignia of Earth's Expeditionary Corps. His wrists bore faint red lines where restraints had once been, and his boots were scuffed from a journey that had crossed half the galaxy under guard. Around him, the court watched in fascinated silence. Humans were rare here. Not because they were unknown, but because they rarely survived long enough to stand before the throne. Earth was considered a minor power, persistent, troublesome, and dangerously idealistic. The Valorians had crushed stronger species without ceremony. Queen Zyrith leaned forward slightly, the movement enough to make several nobles lower their heads instinctively. "Kneel," she commanded, her voice resonating through the crystal hall, amplified by ancient harmonics. "Acknowledge my sovereignty, or face immediate execution." The words echoed, layered with centuries of precedent. Every being brought before the throne knelt. Some did it out of fear, others out of desperate hope. Those who refused became lessons carved into history. Elias did not kneel. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile or a defiant grin. It was small, almost gentle, as if he had heard something unexpectedly familiar. A ripple passed through the court. Guards shifted their weapons. One of the lesser nobles hissed softly in alarm. Queen Zyrith narrowed her eyes. "Explain yourself, human," she said, her tone now sharp. "Your species understands submission. I have seen your treaties." Elias met her gaze without lowering his head. His heart hammered in his chest, but years of command training kept his posture steady. "Your Majesty," he said evenly, "where I come from, kneeling is a choice. Not a requirement for survival." A murmur swept the hall. To suggest choice in the presence of the Queen was dangerously close to blasphemy. Zyrith rose from her throne. She was taller than any Valorian guard, her form elegant and terrible, her robes flowing like liquid night. Each step she took toward Elias sent vibrations through the floor. "You stand in the heart of my empire," she said. "Entire civilizations have burned for less than this insolence. Why do you smile?" Elias exhaled slowly. This was the moment he had prepared for, though no simulation had ever captured the weight of her presence. "Because I've already lost everything you can take from me," he replied. "And because I think you already know that killing me won't give you what you want." The Queen stopped less than a meter away from him. Her attendants froze. No one had ever spoken to her at such proximity without permission. "What I want," she said softly, "is obedience." Elias shook his head. "No. What you want is certainty." That word struck something unseen. Queen Zyrith studied him more carefully now, her earlier anger tempered by curiosity. She gestured, and the guards lowered their weapons slightly, not enough to relax, but enough to delay death. "You were a commander," she said. "Your records were thorough. They wanted you to see them," Elias replied. "Just like they wanted me to stand here." The middle of the story had begun long before this moment. Elias had been captured during the siege of Lornis Reach, a remote system where human engineers had been helping evacuate civilians from a Valorian expansion zone. When the Dominion fleet arrived, the evacuation failed. Thousands were taken. Elias had stayed behind to cover the final transports. He had expected death. Instead, he was brought to the Queen. During the weeks of transit, he learned why. The Valorian Dominion was fracturing. Border systems resisted. Ancient vassals questioned imperial authority. The Queen's rule remained absolute in name, but certainty, the belief that her will was inevitable, was weakening. Humans, with their stubborn refusal to submit fully, fascinated her. Back in the Hall of Accord, Zyrith circled Elias slowly. "You believe yourself beyond fear," she said. "No," Elias answered. "I'm terrified. But fear doesn't always mean surrender." She stopped in front of him again. "Then kneel," she repeated, more quietly. "Prove your fear has meaning." Elias's smile faded, replaced by something heavier. "If I kneel," he said, "I become exactly what you expect. Another conquered species. Another silence. But if I stand, you're forced to decide what kind of ruler you really are." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Queen Zyrith's claws flexed. For a moment, it seemed she would strike him down where he stood. Her power was unquestioned, her strength overwhelming. Yet she did not move. Instead, she turned away. "For generations," she said to the court, "our dominance has been defined by submission. We demand it, and the galaxy complies. But compliance has grown thin, brittle." She looked back at Elias. "This human stands without weapons, without allies, and refuses to kneel. Not because he believes he can defeat me, but because he believes there is something worse than death." Elias swallowed hard. He had not expected this turn. Zyrith raised her voice. "Tell me, human, what is worse than death?" "Living without dignity," Elias replied. "And ruling without respect." Silence fell like a physical weight. The Queen returned to her throne, sitting slowly, thoughtfully. In that moment, the balance of the hall shifted. The nobles sensed it. The guards felt it in their tightened grips. "You will not kneel," Zyrith said at last. "No," Elias said. "I won't." "Then you will serve," she said. Elias frowned. "Serve? You will stand as you are now," she continued, "before my court, my rivals, and my enemies. A human who refused submission and lived." A sharp intake of breath echoed from the gallery. "You will be my living contradiction," the Queen said. "A reminder that obedience forced is weaker than loyalty earned." Elias stared at her. "You're asking me to become a symbol." "Yes," she said simply. "And symbols are dangerous." The middle of Elias's story unfolded over the months that followed. He was not imprisoned, nor was he free. He attended councils, watched debates, and stood beside the Queen during audiences with rebellious governors. Each time, he remained standing while others knelt. Each time, the tension in the room sharpened. Some nobles despised him. Others watched him with fascination. A few began to straighten their backs, just slightly, when addressing the throne. The Queen spoke with Elias often, though never in public. "You weaken my image," she accused him once. "I strengthen your future," he replied. "You remind them I can choose mercy," she said another time. "And that choice is power," he answered. Slowly, resistance within the Dominion changed form. Rebellions quieted not out of fear, but uncertainty. The Queen was no longer predictable. She listened. She negotiated. She spared. And the galaxy noticed. Yet change always demands a price. A faction within the Valorian military attempted a coup, declaring the Queen corrupted by alien ideals. The Hall of Accord became a battlefield of politics and threats. Elias was targeted, his presence labeled heresy. On the day of reckoning, as fleets gathered and civil war loomed, Queen Zyrith summoned Elias once more. "This ends today," she said. "One way or another." Elias nodded. "I figured it would. If I fall," she said, "they will kill you." "Wouldn't be the first time someone tried," he replied, offering that familiar, calm smile. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Loyalists clashed with extremists, words turning into violence, alliances fracturing openly at last. When it ended, Queen Zyrith still stood. She addressed the surviving court with blood still staining the crystal floor. "Today," she declared, "the Dominion changes. Not because a human demanded it, but because I chose it." She turned to Elias. "Kneel," she said. The word sent a chill through the hall. Elias looked at her, searching her expression. She held his gaze steadily. "Not to me," she said. "To the idea that strength can evolve." Slowly, deliberately, Elias knelt. Not in submission. In acknowledgement. The ending was not marked by fanfare or celebration. Elias was eventually returned to human space, escorted not as a prisoner, but as an envoy. Treaties followed. Borders stabilized. The Valorian dominion remained powerful, but no longer absolute. As for Queen Zyrith, her reign became known as the Turning Era, the moment the Empire learned that fear alone could not hold a galaxy together. Years later, Elias would sometimes remember the Hall of Accord, the Black Crystal Throne, and the moment his smile had shifted the course of history. Not because it defied a queen, but because it reminded her she was more than a tyrant. And in that reminder, everything changed.